Bruce Stone is one of the very, very special people in my life. I have known him since he was 7 years old. All those many years ago, I was Mr. Stone's babysitter. I was with the Stone family for 4 great summers as the caretaker of Brucey and his 2 younger brothers. It was back then that we called Mr. Stone Brucey, and the name has continued to be used by us in science since then. Not much has changed since those summer days that we spent together. Although the photos show us both growing up, we still to this day are together. We have celebrated the happy days and have worked through the sad events and the changes in our lives. But no matter what the changes have been, somehow we have managed to be together. But life is about to change for both Brucey and me. Brucey is moving on. Our bond, however, will only be stretched, not broken, by the miles that will separate us. How could I ever forget this kind, generous to a fault, and loving man who always has had the power to make me laugh? Mr. Stone will always and forever have a warm place in my heart. Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Sue. Please be seated. The one nice thing about making a speech like this is that I can have it here in front of me with a font large enough so I don't need glasses. It's easier. I'm not an overly religious person. However, religion itself is a significant aspect of my life. My take is that it is more important to live and practice the basic tenets of Christianity than to walk into a building and just profess my belief. No offense to present company, but I find a significant part of the religious community worldwide to be quite hypocritical, as they say one thing, but do another. To me, I firmly believe that actions are significantly more important than words. Therefore, I belong to what I call the Church of Bruce. Now, in the Church of Bruce, we have interesting beliefs. For example, my mother has become the Virgin Sally, and she really likes that title. But in other areas, we have just one commandment, and that way it's harder to sin with just one commandment, and that is to live life that actually matters. The rumors about my retirement at such a young age are true. I do not look upon this with melancholy, but rather with excitement and anticipation. I have spent 27 of the finest years of my life here at Episcopal. I presented my 2 children their diplomas here. I still have nieces and nephews here. Nelson, where are you? There's only one in upper school. I have loved my life here. However, this love of living has led me to believe that now is the proper moment to leave the comfort zone of the classroom with the hopes of taking my life to a new level. I invite all of you to apply the same zest to your maturation as a person. I was reading Newsweek 2 weeks ago, and because Mother Day was approaching, they asked 3 so-called celebrities. I assumed they were celebrities. I had no idea who the heck these guys were. They had to comment on the greatest thing your mother ever taught you. I don't sleep well, so in the middle of the night, I took this question one step further. What's the greatest lesson that I've ever learned? I did not have a ready answer, but then a few nights later, I actually did. That lesson was the basic aspect to the Church of Bruce. Live your life to the fullest. There are 4 stories of how this became embedded into my psyche. First, and most importantly, in 1981, my youngest brother Jim, who was 16 at the time, was diagnosed with an inoperable malignant brain tumor in February. I had just started my teaching career at a local school. At that stage of my life, what free time I had was spent either dating a girl who was 300 miles away or going home to help my mother and spend time with my brother. By that fall, Jim had endured 3 surgeries, countless rounds of chemotherapy and radiation. He had physically deteriorated so much that he was wheelchair-bound and bedridden. He weighed less than 100 pounds, and a portion of his swelling brain was conspicuously sticking out through one of his incisions. The tumor had slowly begun to consume him, and at the same time, the pressure building up was creating overall paralysis. My 300-mile courtship had to take a sabbatical as Jim's health continued to decline. I was the only one of my parents' children living nearby. Therefore, I had a responsibility by default. What free time I had was spent helping out my parents. One particular night in October, I was watching television with Jim when he looked at me and said, "It's been a good life." He died a month later. Though he died young, that night he showed me the importance of living in the present and treasuring what you have done and not what you could have accomplished. Lesson number 2. Very early in my teaching career, in the teaching career of Mark Mandeville, he gave a very short chapel talk, and yet it hit a very resonant chord with me. It's a type of topic that you see frequently in, say, a Reader's Digest, and you cut out and file away for inspiration. This one was about two people who were talking about the most important type of punctuation. One offered the period for its command of the paragraph. The other argued for the question mark for its inquisitive learning nature. However, it was eventually agreed upon that the most important punctuation mark was the hyphen. Why? Go to a graveyard and read a tombstone. The first date is your birth. The second date is your death. But those two dates pale in comparison to the hyphen that separates them. For that hyphen represents your life and what makes you important as a person. Your birth and death are just waypoints of a more important journey. It's what you did during the hyphen that truly matters. Lessons 3 and 4 occurred within the last 2 years. Two of my closest friends, Lance Cave and Mark Mandeville, passed away. I was a student of Mr. Cave's, not just because he taught me chemistry while I was a student here at Episcopal. He did. Coached me in football as well. Okay, but more importantly, I learned the art of teaching from him. I spent 25 years learning at his side. I watched him closely. I talked to him often. We went to conventions together. Whenever I had a problem, issue, or concern, he was always there for me. Because of Mr. Cave, in 25 years, I had almost figured out how to do this job correctly. When he retired, I was afraid to actually go solo. But there was more to our friendship and mentoring. We talked about home improvements, and more importantly, we talked about family. It seemed that my two children had mirrored the development of his two children almost to the letter. With every bump in the road I was having with my children, it seemed as if he had been there as well, and he had survived. From him, I realized that I could survive parenting mostly intact. I was so happy for his retirement and then shocked to find out that 1.5 months into it, he suffers a heart attack and he dies. Last summer, Lance's widow, Meg, was visiting us in Ocean City. We had talked about Lance's influence on me, but also about my brewing thoughts of retirement. Meg was all for my retiring and wanted me to make the announcement right then and there. I was still hesitant. I was unsure if I really wanted to, as I really enjoyed being in the classroom. But I guess going out on top is better than being pushed out later on. Then this past October, Mr. Mandeville died. It was not all unexpected. He and his family had been spending weeks with us in Ocean City for years. And last summer when they left after their vacation, Sue and I knew that he was on borrowed time. But the lesson I learned is not because they died. While both had full and enriching lives, they show me that often one does not choose the time when they go. The lesson is that they both had lived a life that matters. In the grand scheme of things, our time is short. We are all aware of when we started. The real problem is that most of us will have no clue when it will end. In the interim, it is important that each and every one of us live this brief period to the fullest. However, if you don't live a life that matters, then all your life is quite empty in the long run. I'm a closet inspirational hoarder. If I read something that truly inspires me, I will cut it out and I will place it into a folder. I then promptly forget that it exists until the next time I open the folder. In this folder, I have a poem that I have no idea how I ever received it. I don't know the author, the date it was written. I know absolutely nothing about the origin of this piece of paper other than I have it and it inspires me. I've read it a few times since last summer, and with its lessons, I am comfortable with the fact that now is the time for me to move on. My wife and I are building a boat that we will take possession of sometime next spring. Once we do, the two of us, plus our dog, will set out for parts unknown. My address will be wherever the anchor rests or the location of the marina. I want to reach out of my comfort zone and meet people across the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean. It is time to live my life to the fullest. Now, I was reticent about making this speech in the first place. I abhor being the center of attention, and yet a lot of what I've just said is placing me there, and that is not my intention. I would like to think that I'm having this talk for you. If I can leave here and maybe persuade some of you to start living your life more productively now and forever, then I have achieved my goal. We tend to lose our focus, our direction, and ourselves too much in the mundane acts of life. We have forgotten the hyphen. We have forgotten how important it is to live a life that matters. The poem is entitled, Live a Life That Matters. Ready or not, someday it will all come to an end. There will be no more sunrises, no minutes, hours, or days. All the things you've collected, whether treasured or forgotten, will pass to someone else. Your wealth, fame, temporal power will shrivel to irrelevance. It will not matter what you own or are owed. Your grudges, resentments, frustrations, and jealousies will finally disappear. So too will all your hopes, ambitions, plans, and to-do lists. They will expire. The wins and losses that seem so important to your everyday life will fade away. It won't matter if you were beautiful or brilliant. Even your gender and skin color will be irrelevant. So what will matter? How will the value of your days be measured? What will matter is not what you bought, but what you built. Not what you got, but what you gave. What will matter is not your success, but your significance. What will matter is not what you learned, but what you taught. What will matter is every act of integrity, compassion, courage, or sacrifice that enriched, empowered, encouraged others to emulate your example. What will matter is not your competence, but your character. What will matter is not how many people you knew, but how many people will feel a lasting loss when you are gone. What will matter are not your memories, but the memories that live within the people that love you. What will matter is how long you will be remembered, by whom, and for what. Living a life that matters doesn't happen by accident. It's not a matter of circumstance. It's a matter of choice. Choose a life that matters. Thank you.
Let us kneel to pray.